Chris Wallace here with the ATM news for this week. We're going to call this the Porn Plane Express Defender. Let's take a moment to talk about porn addiction. Bear with me as I use a pilot metaphor to make my point. Imagine you're flying one of those express flights, a short haul between two busy airports, because nothing demonstrates the fall of masculinity better than the Porn Plane Express. Pornography is more than a secret vice living in the shadows of cultural chaos. It is a way to disempower powerful defenders and keep them that way. So let's talk about flying planes and specifically pilot and autopilot. You see, most men think addiction is all about dopamine. Well, sure it is, and it isn't. Fact is, dopamine is involved in seeking behavior and never fires without adrenaline. They call them the catecholamines. You've heard of adrenaline, right? Of course you have. Adrenaline has fancy names in the brain like epinephrine and norepinephrine, but it's the exact same stuff behind fear. It's why I say all addiction is a fear addiction. It's not the high or the buzz or the whatever else. It's the fear state people seek. We use adrenaline to create physiological arousal and focus attention. The result is a fear state using dopamine and adrenaline, which narrows focus. We can take many thoughts and turn them into fewer thoughts. Now think of the first letter in the acronym FOMO and what it stands for. See what I mean? Let me ask you something else. What's the highest relapse trigger for someone trying to abstain from an addiction, whatever addiction it is? Is it when they're having a bad day? Or when they encounter peer pressure, perhaps? Isolation. Isolation figures in porn. Surely that's it, right? Sure. You may be surprised to know that success is the biggest relapse trigger. Some of us can't stand it. Others believe reward is due them somehow if they have a good day. And before you know it, a guy's falling off the wagon, be it porn, booze, drugs, gambling, food, or something else. If a guy has a decent day and comes home to an empty room, that combo is a risky trigger. Before long, he's focused on why he's alone and doesn't know how to deal with it. The FOMO wheels are turning and Porn Plane Express is taxiing for takeoff. You see, a calm nervous system feels unsafe to a man who has either lived in chaos or learned to tolerate it. For him, silence is too loud. Calm feels like nothing. He's a fear seeker, handy during wartime for manning the perimeter or scouting the enemy. But in regular living, he can turn it on himself. So the body does what it knows best. It looks for stimulation. It looks for physiological arousal. It looks for a way to feel alive again, because a fear state is in many ways his homeostasis, his normal, higher heart rate, blood pressure, shallower breathing. Porn is perfect for that. It's intensity on demand. It spikes adrenaline and dopamine together, creating a chemical storm that mimics the excitement of risk without real or true consequence. Let's talk about fear as comfort. Fear gives a man something to do. It gives him focus. It narrows his vision and simplifies his world. That's why many men unconsciously create stress. They're not broken. It just might be bored. When fear is the only state that feels like home, peace feels like a loss. So he goes looking for intensity. He may call it stress, but what it really is stimulation. A man's natural need for action is subverted with porn. He's kind of like the pilot sitting in a cockpit feeling antsy while waiting endlessly for control tower permission to take off. This is normal, just as men might itch to get in the game and get moving in all sorts of situations. It's what men do. Porn, however, mimics a man's quest for novelty and excitement. Every relapse begins with that subtle shift, the body missing the noise. For a man addicted to fear, porn becomes a quick hit of fervency. It's fear dressed up as pleasure. Afterward, the same chemical system that gave him the thrill gives him the crash. Cortisol rises, testosterone drops, guilt and fatigue follow. The man tells himself he's chasing pleasure, but he knows he's chasing the same old, same old. So let's talk about the porn trap for our pilot. Porn sells the illusion of control. The man decides when, where, and what he sees. He's in command of the fantasy, which tricks his body into believing he's powerful again. But that control is fake. Even while chasing his kink, he isn't leading. The kink's in charge. His nervous system in this instance has trained him to confuse arousal with power. Physiological arousal, absent visible threat, means his nervous system has cried wolf and confused the brain. So just like imagine our pilot feeling like he's taking off while the plane never budges an inch. And how would that fuck up his self-belief? Seriously. Each repetition weakens his confidence, his identity, and his resolve. We could say his co-pilot, resilience, leaves the cockpit. Sure, he feels alive in the moment, but weaker after every flight. This is the true cost of the porn plane express. Our pilot mistakes chemical elevation for confidence, but the more he seeks it this way, the less he has. In fact, he's killing his confidence slowly but surely. You see, we think we have free will, but mostly we don't. The nervous system runs us. Conscious awareness is along for the ride. Yet, the mentioned awareness in this newsletter gives us one little gift, the ability to choose again. It's like a door on a spring hinge, open just a crack with dim lighting behind it. If we ignore it, it'll just shut again, and we're none the wiser. However, if we push on the door a little bit and open it wider, we walk into a different room. And that's what the porn plane express is really about. Men living on autopilot, mistaking relief for freedom. The moment a man realizes the imaginary plane is flying itself on fucking autopilot, going nowhere, he's faced with a single question. Will he take back controls or keep pretending he's in charge when he knows he's not? The same truth applies to every form of compulsion, be it food, sex, booze, scrolling, or chasing validation. The autopilot button is his familiar fear, and that fear is aging him. 5 years can go by, and then one day he realizes he didn't just live those 5 years, he lived a version of one fucking year 5 times. Don't do that, brother. Some guys do it for 20 years. The solution isn't shame either. You can't really shame yourself into quitting, at least not very well. Shame tends to feed the same adrenaline loop. Instead, you have to retrain your body to feel safe in calm. You have to teach your nervous system that peace isn't death. Why? Because learning addiction is like riding a bike. At first, it's awkward. Maybe even you crash, but soon you can do it like no hands. And you never forget how to ride a bike. 20 years later, you jump on a bike, you haven't been on button, you ride like normal. So you have to unlearn riding that particular fear bike in that particular situation to upgrade your operating system. How? You find new ways to deal with old triggers. You say, I don't ride that bike no more. That's for lesser men than me, the man I used to be. You have to press the autopilot button off and take control of the plane. Remember that bit assigned to Einstein about the mark of insanity is doing the same shit over and over again, expecting different results? Well, keep that in mind and do different shit. At home alone after a decent day, what's something intentional you can do to ensure autopilot doesn't take over? Awareness brings the possibility of change. It's not about free will, brother. It's about exercising your free won't. That starts with breathing, with a moment of stillness, with pause between stimulus and response, with pattern interrupt, with accountability, with opposite actions. The moment you feel the impulse to check out, observe it, breathe it, and turn into it. Ask, what fear is it trying to protect me from? Usually the answer is simple. Is it the fear of emptiness or insignificance, of sitting alone with yourself? But at that moment of awareness is the beginning of your pilot mastery. You can use it as fuel instead of letting it fly the plane. Understand that porn is not about lust. It's about fear, control, escape, and self-destruction. The cure is awareness, discipline, and reconnection. It's about claiming a new identity. It takes practice to lay down a new pattern, but you'll have turned autopilot off and taken over the controls. And that's when a man starts living again, maybe even flying. Stay powerful, true and free.